Good day, everyone. Today we were talking about the ethical theory called the deontology. So it sounds like a big word, but it actually comes from the Greek word which means the deon, which simply means duty. Let's look at what that means for our daily lives. In this theory, being a good person isn't about the result of your actions, it's about following the rules. If you have a duty to do something, you do it because it is the right thing to do. So no excuses. In this theory, all you have to consider is the laws, the regulations, the obligations you have, without thinking or regardless of the outcomes or the consequences of your actions. In this theory, the right actions will be based on the rules, will be based on the duty or obligations. For the certain example is the paying back money. Think about when you borrow money from a friend. You don't pay them back just because you are afraid they'll get mad. You pay them back because you made a promise. Keeping that promise is your moral duty. If you break it, you aren't just being a bad friend. You are failing your emotional or moral obligation. The most famous guy behind this idea is philosopher Immanuel Kant. He believed that we should use our goodwill. This means doing the right thing just because it is right. He also said we should treat things and people as ends and themselves. This is a fancy way of saying don't use people like tools. Treat everyone and everything like nature with respect. Another certain example is the environmental. So think about the environmental. We shouldn't protect the earth just because we want to stay alive. We should protect it because it's our duty. According to this text, destroying nature shows a bad way. Caring for the earth is the same as caring for each other. So overall, in deontological ethics or this theory, ang gino-consider lang nito or it is only focused on the rules, obligations, or your duty. Even though your actions is you think it is morally right, but in this theory, kung ano yung nasa regulations or nasa obligations or your duty is yun yung tama dito. So regardless of the outcomes, even though the outcomes is not that good, ang importante is you follow the rules or the certain obligations. So the next time you have a choice to make, don't just ask what will happen if I do this. Instead, ask yourself, is this my duty? If the answer is yes, then that is the right path to take. So that would be all, and thanks for listening.
Good day everyone. So my name is Amr Hassan Bayabo, and I will be discussing about what Kantian ethics is. So Kantian ethics, also known as duty-based ethics by the philosopher Immanuel Kant. This ethical theory focuses on duty, moral law, and the use of reason in determining what is morally right and wrong. So, who is Immanuel Kant? Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher who lived during the Age of Enlightenment from 1724 to 1804. He became one of the most influential philosophers in modern philosophy because of his idea about morality, reason, freedom, and human understanding. According to the text, his philosophy greatly influenced ethics, political philosophy, metaphysics, and many other fields. So, what is Kantian ethics? Kantian ethics is an ethical theory developed by Immanuel Kant. It is a form of deontological ethics, or what we also call duty-based ethics. So, ang ibig sabihin nito is that the morality of an action depends on whatever it follows, moral duty or moral law. not on consequences of the action. Kant even said, duty is the necessity of an act in reverence of the moral law. And now, let's proceed to the meaning of the deontological ethics. The word deontological came from the Greek words deontos, meaning duty, and logos, meaning account or study. This ethical theory teaches that actions are morally right when they follow a set of moral principles or duties. So in Kantian ethics, ang focus talaga is doing what is right because it is our duty, even if mahirap or hindi natin gusto. Now, the importance of duty. The text explained duty using the life of students. From the moment students wake up, they already have responsibilities like studying lessons, doing chores, wearing IDs, following school rules, and obeying curfew hours. And sometimes we may not want to do these things, pero ginagawa pa rin natin because they are our duties. According to Kantian ethics, reason guides to us to perform these duties regardless of our feelings. And now let's talk about the universal moral laws. Kantian ethics teaches us that moral laws are universal and timeless. This means that moral principles should apply to everyone, regardless of place or time. Morality should not only depend on culture, religion, or personal feelings. The text also says that people may know what is morally right and still choose to do wrong, but this does not excuse them from their moral obligations. And now let's talk about the freedom and autonomy. So, can't believe that humans are free and are capable of making moral decisions through reason. And this freedom is called autonomy or autonomous will. In the text, autonomy means that humans can create and follow moral laws independently without depending on external influence or even personal passions. So morality is connected to our free will and personal decisions to obey the moral law. And now let's talk about the morality and reason. So according to Kantian ethics, morality is closely connected to reason. Laws and moral principles are created through rational thinking and careful deliberation. The text explains that when a person knowingly violates moral law, that action becomes irrational. Kaya for Kant, a responsible person is someone who follows moral law through the guidance of reasons. So what is the main idea of Kantian ethics? To summarize, the main ideas of Kantian ethics are duty, reason, moral law, and free will. A moral action is not judged by its outcome but by whatever it follows moral duty. Kantian ethics teaches that people should obey moral laws because they are the right thing to do. And now, to sum it up, or in conclusion, Kantian ethics is a duty-based ethical theory developed by Immanuel Kant. It teaches that morality comes from reason and universal moral laws. Humans are free and capable of deciding what is morally right, and they have the duty to follow moral laws. And lastly, the text leaves us with the important question: how do we determine moral law?
How can you know if an action is morally right or wrong without any religious doctrines? I am Narhidaya Guling, the third reporter. In this part of video reporting, I'm going to report the categorical imperative by Immanuel Kant.
What did you steal?
We stole some medicine that our mom needed.
And you got arrested?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, how long have you been sick?
It's about a month. It's chills, fever. It's not clearing up.
Are you employed, ma'am?
Unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I lost my job. Therefore, my insurance went with it. I gave them a few dollars, whatever I had left.
How much money did you guys have?
We were just a couple bucks short. We had $75 and it costed $80.
Your Honor, please give them mercy if they were just looking out for their mom.
You do understand that there are consequences for your actions. When you do bad stuff, you have to pay the price.
Please, Your Honor, they don't deserve this. They were looking out for me. I promise they're not bad kids. They just please give them a chance.
Unfortunately, I feel that these children have to learn a lesson. Do these children have hot meals waiting for them when they get home?
Not every night.
I am going to send these children to community service at the food bank, and I'm pretty sure that they can give you guys some food to help your family during this time of need. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
Imagine that you're one of the children in the video. Your mother is very sick and your family does not have enough money to buy her medicine. So you decide to steal money just to get her treated. Now, imagine if everyone in the world did the same thing you did, would the world be a good or fair place? This situation helps us think about morality, just like Immanuel Kant does. According to Kant, morality means acting in accordance with the categorical imperative. Because for him, the categorical imperative is the supreme principle of morality. This is why this statement of Immanuel Kant states that morality is not about whether an action brings personal benefit or solves a problem. Instead, morality is about following the categorical imperative, which is the supreme principle of morality. So, understanding the term helps us determine the whole concept or the bigger picture for the categorical imperative. But before I discuss what is categorical imperative really is, let me define you the two terms affected by categorical imperative, which is this is the categorical and imperative itself. So the first one is categorical. So when we say categorical, this means universal and impartial. A moral rule that is categorical applies to all rational beings without bias or exemption. So categorical, in other words, means the rule is universal and impartial. This is why a moral rule must apply to everyone, accessible to everyone, everywhere, without exemption. That's what categorical really is, the categorical itself. So, when we talk about imperative, this means a command or something that is obligatory. So in other words, when we say imperative, means this is a command and obligation because it tells us what we must do, not what we simply want to do. This is why, based on the example earlier about stealing might feel somewhat justified because the intention of those children are pure, as it helps their mother to get treated, by the way. But if you do something that you know that there's a right way to do it, but somehow you did not do it, you choose the other way, For Immanuel Kant, that is considered as immoral. Yes, because imagine if everyone stole whenever they needed something, society would become unsafe and unfair. Because according to the categorical imperative, stealing cannot be a universal moral law because it fails the test of universality, wherein you cannot apply stealing to get your mother treated in different situations. That's what makes it not universal. So, for Immanuel Kant, that is considered as immoral for him. Therefore, even in difficult situation, Kant teaches that morality is about doing what is right because it is a duty, not just because it benefits us. Because when we say duty, duty is doing the right thing because it is right, not because you want a reward or want to avoid punishment. So, in order to further understand what categorical imperative, let's first explore the two types of imperative. These are the hypothetical and categorical imperative. As we dive into this topic, I there's something that I want to remind you. Not all commands are categorical because as I said earlier that imperative means command. You should do it. It is like absolute. You have to do it, but not all commands are categorical, and here's why. So Kant distinguishes between two types of imperatives. First one is the hypothetical imperatives. So when we say hypothetical imperatives, these are conditional commands. Condition. So they tell you what to do if you want a certain result. Let's say, to determine the hypothetical imperative, let's first consider the following. First is the desire. This is the what the person wants. Second, command, or this is the imperative itself. This means what action is required. So the third one is condition. The if part that makes it dependent on the desire. So as we can discover, these considerations will help us to determine if a situation is an hypothetical imperative. Here's the first example, and it revolves around studying for a grade. Here's the scenario. Alex said, I don't feel like studying for philosophy. Well, Jamie said, well, if you want to pass the exam, you must study. So that's the scenario. How do we determine hypothetical imperative there? So to determine it, you should apply the considerations that I have discussed earlier. So the first one is scenario. So what's the scenario? You want to pass your philosophy. That's the scenario. So what will be your desire or goal? So in this scenario, the desire and goal there is to pass the philosophy exam. So what will be the command? So the command there is you must study. So last but not the least is condition if you want to pass the exam. So the action studying is not required universally. It only applies if your goal is to pass. If someone doesn't care about passing, the command is meaningless to them. This shows that hypothetical imperatives are conditional. Why? Because they depend on a personal goal or desire. Because without a personal goal or desire, you will not do something about it. And that's what makes it not universal and conditional also. And that's what makes it hypothetical imperative for this first example. Now let's proceed to the second example. The second example revolves around saving money. So here's the scenario. Maria said, I really want that new laptop, but I kept spending my money. So Leo said, if you want to buy the laptop, you should save 500 pesos each week. So as we can discover here, we should apply those considerations earlier. So the first one, what is the scenario? You want to buy a new laptop. So your desire is buy a new laptop. So the command there, or the imperative part, is you should save 500 pesos each week. So the condition, if you want to buy the laptop. So the command exists only because of the personal desire to own a laptop. Someone without that goal doesn't have an obligation to save. And that's right. The moral weight is dependent on the goal. Unlike a categorical imperative, which is I'm going to discuss that later, which applies regardless of personal desires. So saving money to buy a new laptop is not universal because you will do that something based on this scenario because you want to buy a laptop. So as we can discover, we cannot apply it in different situations and all times because you can buy a laptop by having a condition. So that's what makes an hypothetical imperative in second example. Now, let's proceed to the most awaited imperatives, which is the categorical imperatives. So as we can discover, these are absolute commands that apply regardless of your goals or desires. In other words, you are obliged to do it even if it is like doesn't benefit you much, something like that. Whatever your reason, you should do the right thing. It is like an absolute command. When we say absolute command, you have to do it. Not you should do it. You have to do it because not doing it, like do the other thing, will make it immoral. So let's consider the first example, which is returning a lost wallet. So here's the scenario. Sam said, wow, someone left a wallet here. It's full of cash. Should I just keep it? But Alex said, no, you must return the wallet to its owner. That's the right thing to do, even if it is convenient. So, what can we observe in this scenario? So, the main point is you find a wallet with money and ID. Returning it might be inconvenient, but keeping it feels tempting because it is not yours. So the command there, specifically absolute command in the categorical imperative, is you must return the wallet to its owner. So this command does not depend on your desires or goals, because there's no goals here in categorical imperative. Even if you wanted the money or no one would know, you are still morally obliged to return it. The duty exists independently of outcomes or personal benefit. So now let's move on to the second example, which is telling the truth in a crisis. Here's the scenario. Maya said, "Do you think my idea is terrible? I don't want to hurt your feelings." But Leah said, "You must tell the truth even if it is hard." What can we observe here? So the main point here, a friend asks for your opinion on something personal. Lying would make them temporarily happy, but honestly might hurt. The command here, specifically absolute command, is you must tell the truth even if it is hard. So your duty to tell the truth is not conditional on whether the friend wants to hear it or whether lying would be easier. Truthfulness is a moral obligation by itself. If everyone lied whenever it was convenient, communication and trust would collapse. That's right. This is why telling the truth can be viewed as universal. It respects the rationality and dignity of others, and society relies on honesty and function. The command becomes a moral law because it applies to all rational agents at all times. Truthfulness is right regardless of desire, circumstances, and consequence. To sum up everything, what is categorical imperative? This means each action should be categorized as universal law because an action should be true in all times, in all situations. This is why before you act, ask yourself, if everyone in the world were about to do what I'm going to do right now, would the world literally collapse? Then I believe that's in your hands to decide.
Assalamualaikum to each and everyone. My name is Ibra Nizrin, and today I will be discussing the formulation of universal law by Immanuel Kant. This principle is a way of checking if an action is morally right or wrong. Instead of focusing on results, it focuses on whether an action can be followed by everyone. Kant suggests that before we act, we should ask ourselves a simple question. What if everyone did this? If the action still makes sense and does not create any problem when applied to everyone, then it is morally acceptable. But if it leads to confusion, contradiction, or a breakdown in a society, then it is not morally right. He explained this idea through the statement, "Act only according to that maxim, hereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law." In simpler terms, we should only do acts. In simpler terms, we should only do action that we believe can become a rule for everyone. Now, let's talk about the essentials elements for this principle. First is maxim. A maxim is the personal rule or reason behind an action. It answers the question, why am I doing this? Every action we take is based on some kind of maxim. Second is universal law. This means that a rule should apply to all people equally. A moral rule is not just for one person, it should work for everyone without exception. Next, how does this principle actually work? First, we identify the action you want to do. Second, determine your reason or maxim. Third, imagine that everyone follows the same rule. Then fourth, evaluate what would happen. If the result is acceptable and society can still function properly, then the action is moral. If not, then it is immoral. Let me give an example. If someone decides to lie to get out of trouble, and we imagine that everyone does the same thing, then people will stop trusting each other. Communication will break down. Because of this, lying cannot be universal law. Another example is keeping promises. If everyone keeps their promises, trust is maintained in society. So, keeping promises can be considered morally right. Overall, the formulation of universal law teaches us to think beyond ourselves. It reminds us that our actions should not only benefit us, but should also be acceptable if everyone else did the same. So, in conclusion, these principles help us make fair and rational decision by testing whether our action can be applied universally. It encourages consistency, responsibility, and fairness in our behavior. And that ends my part. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Once again, I am Ibra Nizrin.
I recommend a pleasant day to each and everyone. My name is Lemon Mahida. So now I will be talking about the formulation of the respect, or also known as Formula of Humanity by Immanuel Kant. This idea comes from his grand work of the Metaphysics of Morals, where he says, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in another. Never simply as a means, but always as an end. This quote means that human beings are not tools or objects to be used just to get what you want, and we must treat every person as someone valuable and important in themselves, with dignity and rights. It teaches us that we can interact and ask for help, but we must never lie, manipulate, or force others because they have their own freedom and choices. Whether it is other people or ourselves, we must always act with respect and fairness. Do not use people, treat them with respect. For example, is you only just become someone's friends because they are rich or popular. So that basically means that you are treating them as an means. But if you value them for who they are, you are treating them as a end. Key concept: means versus ends. Means are tools or instruments like a pen or a phone or a hammer. We use tools to finish a job. Ends means something that has own value. People are not tools; they are important by themselves. So the rules is we can use things, but we cannot use people. As Kant say that people are not tools. Example: copying your classmate answer just to pass the exam is using them as a means. Respecting their effort and doing your own work, treat them as an end. So also human dignity is absolute. This means a person's value cannot be bought. You cannot say, I am better than you because I am rich or powerful. Every human being has equal worth, no matter who they are. Example: a janitor and a CEO both deserve respect. Even their jobs are different, their dignity is the same. So how to apply it, or so how do we apply this in real life? First thing is respect autonomy. This means that letting people make their own choices. For example, if your friend, if your friend chooses different courses and you respect their decision even if you disagree about it. Second is avoid deception. Do not lie or trick others. For example, if you lie to your parents just to go out, is you are using them or you are using them to get what you want. Third is consent is key. Um, People should agree willingly and know the truth. For example, borrowing something without permission is wrong. But if you ask and they agree, that is respect. Lastly, apply it to yourself. You should also respect yourself and do not let others pressure you into doing something wrong like cheating or harmful behavior. So the next one is connection and importance. This idea is very important because it's like the golden rule: do not on to others what you don't want others to on to you. If you don't want to be fooled or used, then don't do it to others. Kant also call this as categorical imperative. This means it is a rule that applies to everyone all the time, no exception. For example, it is always wrong to cheat or manipulate others even if it benefits you. The principle is also important uh, because it is the foundation of human rights, just as respectful relationship. It tells us that everyone deserves to be treated fairly. For example, laws against abuse and exploitation exist because people have dignity. With this topic, every person has dignity simply because they are human and capable of thinking and choosing of what they want. Our duty is to treat others with respect, fairness, and kindness. Instead of using people to get, uh, Instead of using people to get ahead, we should value them and treat them properly. Always remember that value people, don't just use them.